All right, good morning. Thank you for joining us. We are delighted to welcome back, albeit virtually, David Beasley, the Executive Director of the World Food Program, who has just returned from a trip to Yemen. I know David has a hard out at 11:30, so we'll go straight to him, and then we'll take as many questions as possible. So David, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. And it's great to be with everybody. I can't tell who's in the audience there. I know I saw Edith, but thank you for the chance to talk about what I spoke to at the Security Council yesterday, but we can actually drill down on that a little bit more as to Yemen especially. I was on the ground in Yemen talking with the leaders from the south to the north, as well as the Houthi leaders. And I've been, of course, talking to leaders around the world since I came out, and I'm here in Washington, D.C., updating officials here with regards to the financial needs, access issues, fuel, and the whole 9 yards. And so, as you know, the situation in Yemen is catastrophic. It's the worst humanitarian crisis on earth, with 16 million people literally in crisis emergency mode, and 5 million that truly are knocking on the door of famine. And so if we don't get the monies we need and the fuel, we're going to have probably the worst famine I know in my lifetime. And so we've got to move things along. Obviously, we're pushing for peace. That's the answer. Hopefully, with the Biden administration really pushing hard, we're hopeful that will drive some solutions forward, which will be extremely important because we've got so many tragedies, catastrophes looming in the world right now. There's just not enough money for all of them. And so it's more critical than ever to end some of these wars. And so let me just stop right there. I think most of you heard my numbers if you saw me speak yesterday in 7. I'll just really throw it to answering any questions that may have on specific topics, however you want me to go.
All right. Well, I know they're always happy to ask you questions because you actually answer them. So
you never know.
Yeah. All right. Well, first question will go to Edie Lederer.
Hi, David. Thanks so much, and nice to see you almost sandbagged in there. I have a question about comments today by U.S. Special Envoy Tom Lenderking, who said that the United States is resuming aid to the north in Yemen. I assume that that's going to be a substantial amount of money. Do you know how much? Is it going to WFP? Is it going directly to NGOs? And how soon is it going to arrive, and how fast can you act on it? And secondly, is there any progress on ending the blockade on fuel and food?
Thank you. Go ahead, David.
Well, actually, I was talking to Tim extensively yesterday about these issues. He didn't give me yesterday the indication of exactly how much, but we expect to have substantial support coming from the donor community, and the United States has not let us down yet when it comes to Yemen, so I don't anticipate that now. We also talked about the humanitarian crisis that we're experiencing across the country, the 6 years of devastation of the war. We also talked about the fuel situation as we expressed concerns that it's difficult enough for us to move fuel into the humanitarian sector, especially with regards to UNICEF, sanitation systems, WHO, and hospitals. What most people don't know is that at WFP, while we move and bring the fuel in for the humanitarian sphere, that doesn't include the food sector. We actually acquire our fuel through the commercial side because we have so many distribution points around the country. You can imagine that's a whole different ballgame. So we're really getting into critical mode. And I wish I had those exact numbers in front of me. They're coming to me, and I can get those to you later on today. But I expressed to not just the United States, but other major players around the world that this fuel blockade is going to create havoc, and we need to work through this immediately. when I was with the Houthis day before yesterday, that was one of the primary subjects of discussion. They were gravely concerned about its impact, not just on the humanitarian sector, because, you know, there are 17 million people that we don't assist by food out of the population of 30 million, because we support now approximately 13 million people. So if the commercial side collapses because of lack of fuel, then the humanitarian numbers will spike, just as they would had the terrorist designation stayed on, you know, to shut down the private sector. So whether it's a designation or fuel, you're going to have some serious implications if the private sector doesn't have fuel.
And just to clarify that this would be additional money going to the north above what the U.S. had been giving to Yemen.
Again, I hadn't seen the numbers and what they're saying, so give me a little bit of time on that. I know we had a very frank conversation in the last 24 hours as well as this morning, and so I'm waiting to hear. But obviously, you know, the United States delisting the terrorist organization designation was a very important step for us in a lot of different ways. And so I just cannot imagine the United States not stepping up financially, but quite importantly is the Gulf states, the Saudis need to step up substantially as well. They need to step up now. Everybody does. I mean, but the problem is, Evie, is this, you know, we got so many crises right now of food, of not just food insecurity, but acute food insecurity. I mean, talking about, you know, we got 34 million people now, literally IPC level 4. That's knocking on the door of famine. And that's $5 billion right there off the top. And that doesn't even get to the, you know, we assisted 114 million people last year. So you can imagine the financial demands this year beyond Yemen. I mean, we can talk about Syria, DRC, Afghanistan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, the Sahel, Lebanon, or Jordan. I mean, the demands are catastrophic right now. And, you know, you turn on the media in the United States right now, it's all about Harry and Meghan. I mean, like, okay, that's fine, but my God, I got people dying right now.
Thank you, David. We'll go to one more question in the room, then we'll go to the screen. James Bays, Al Jazeera.
Hello, Executive Director, James Bays, Al Jazeera. I have a quick follow-up and then I have a different question. But the follow-up is on what US Special Envoy Lenderking has also reportedly said, which is there is a ceasefire plan in front of the Houthis right now. What would that mean if they agreed to that?
A ceasefire would have tremendous positive impact. In fact, I talked to the Houthis 2 days ago about this, that if all parties could move toward a ceasefire, it would truly reduce an extraordinary amount of pressure so that we can move forward. We can then scale up biometrics in a significant way, which will allow us to put more liquidity into the economy, which will drive the real value back up, which will allow food prices to stabilize more. All these things become much more possible if you have a ceasefire where we have greater access and greater stability.
And I have a different question for you, which, given that you're always very frank, I hope you'll answer. In the UN system, the job you've done has been very much praised, and of course your organisation won the Nobel Peace Prize. But your job has been held by someone from the US since the 1990s. And there are other jobs like this in the UN system that different countries continuously hold, not in WFP's view, but in your personal view. In the 21st century, in the UN of all places, do you not think it's time now for the best qualified candidate, regardless of their nationality, to get the job?
Well, you know, that's a political decision right there. But obviously, I'm a started supporter of putting the best people in place. And if there's somebody better than me, you know, all hands on deck. And I'm here just to help no matter who's in charge here. And so I'll leave the politics on that one. But I think we all strive to put the best people in UN positions. And right now, I think the UN is at a magic crossroads with all the catastrophes and crises we have. And it's really important that we put the best of the best in these leadership positions, no matter where they're from around the world. And I know the major donors have a significant voice in that. They should. But at the same time, I would like to think that every decision we're making in terms of leadership is based upon the most qualified. And obviously those who put up a lot of money, that might enhance the profile, but it definitely, the final decision needs to be based on merit.
Thank you. Talal Al-Hajj, Talal Al-Arabiya.
That might mean I get replaced. I don't know.
You're not that lucky, David. You won't be that lucky. All right, Talal.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Steph. This is Talal Hajj from Al-Arabiya. I have a couple of questions for you. We all understand that a ceasefire is a must for us to improve the situation, humanitarian situation in Yemen. And without it, we're really fighting a lost battle. During your visit, when you asked the Houthis, why don't they stop the attack on Ma'rib? They're really vicious attacks, and mostly the ones who fall by the side are the civilians. In spite of all international calls, the Security Council, the special envoys, what do they give you as an excuse for continuing this attack, except to gain ground before any negotiations? That's what.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
go ahead.
let me answer that one, Talal, because that really is a political question into the weeds, and I don't really get into those dynamics. What I do push is generally, one, let's get a ceasefire. Number two, regardless, nationwide, let's get that point first, and two, let's get peace on the ground, long-term solution, because that's what the people need. But to get into the politics of that is beyond my pay grade. I believe that's the political piece. I just want to keep putting the pressure on everybody, because this is a very important point, because we don't have enough money. Because people say, well, I shouldn't be saying anything about a ceasefire and peace process, because that's all political. I'm like, look, I don't have enough money to feed all the people that we need to be feeding right now. You give me all the money that I need to help people stay alive in peace or war, that's one thing. But right now, I mean, you got to stop these wars. And it's our moral obligation to tell the leaders to stop these wars, because we cannot continue at the pace we're continuing. As I break that down as to the
But they never explain to you the need for them to continue these attacks, because they are killing Yemenis directly or indirectly. Did they ever try even to explain why do they have to continue the attack in Ma'rib? I mean, this is not political. This is goes into the heart of your work, and without it, you are handcuffed to do anything.
Well, again, who pulls the trigger on war and conflict? That's political all the way around.
Okay.
The only thing I'm demanding is that they end the conflict, bring us peace, have a ceasefire, and let's move forward.
Okay, David. Okay, the latest killing and maiming and burning of African refugees. Do you have any view on what happened in Sana'a?
Say that again, Talal.
The African refugees who have been exposed to burning in one of the detention centers of the Houthis in Sana'a, and tens and maybe hundreds of people killed, you haven't heard about it when you were
I haven't been briefed on the details of that, so I'm not probably the one to respond. I may have an update on it, but I haven't seen it since I've been traveling back.
The Yemeni
Thank
government did do a good job of informing you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Talal. Michelle Nichols, Reuters. Michelle.
Hi, thanks, David, for the briefing. Apologies for the background noise. Someone's doing construction. Two quick questions. You mentioned that you spoke to the Houthis about a ceasefire. What sort of response did they give you? And also, what do you know about, it appears that there's a private fund that's been set up by Tim Collins.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that? Thanks.
Well, And in fact, I have talked to Tim several times as he expressed his concerns about the governments around the world being stretched because of the crisis that we're now facing because of COVID compared to 2020. And I know Tim's working hard on a private foundation of funds. And so I know our teams have gone through the due diligence to make certain all the standards that we require on humanitarian principles are met. And I think all that's moving in the right direction. And I think there should be an announcement, I hope, in the very near future, because as you know, as we all know, we're hundreds of millions of dollars short of the needs financially inside Yemen. And we're about 38 to 40% funded. I think we need about 800 million in the next 6 months, and we've got about 380 or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And so we're in dire need. Otherwise, we're going to have people dying. And so we've got to take money. We've got to get as much money as we possibly can in right now, because you just don't. Yemen's not like most places where you can move cargo in so quickly. It takes several months to move substantial amounts of grain, commodities into that country because of the situation.
Thank you.
Did he indicate to you how much money he had and where it's coming from? And then just this Houthi ceasefire question. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I know we've been talking about general numbers, but I think it's going to be in the hundreds of millions. And I'm appreciative of that. And again, I don't know all the dynamics, but our team's working on it as we speak. And I'm going to be speaking with him actually later over the next couple of days and see where we are. And of course, it depends on which donors are stepping up when. If the United States steps up more today, and when can that money be mobilized? When are the Saudis going to move some of the monies they've promised? There's a lot of different factors here. But as I've said, in anticipation of some of these monies, we're moving internally some funds to go ahead and acquire commodities, because we want all the people in IPC level 4, those are the people that are in emergency mode. And those are the ones, that's 5 million that are literally knocking on the door of famine. And so we're moving those commodities now in anticipation. And I pray that those monies will come in, because if that'll be another crisis, as you can imagine.
Thank you. Ibtisam Azam. Ibtisam.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mr. Beasley. I have first a question regarding Yemen. I mean, besides the issue of money, could you please say also more about other challenges that you are facing and which steps you see that need to be done? And then I have a general question, which also has to do with Yemen. Yesterday in the Security Council, we heard all countries, including the 5 Ps, speaking about the gravity of the situation, etc. But these same 5 Ps are actually countries who also sell a lot of weapons to the conflict parties. What is your message to them? And do you find it, how do you see this contradiction, not talking the talk but not walking the walk? Thank you.
In Yemen, I think everyone knows how vocal I've been as to any and all parties that stand in the way of our achieving the humanitarian objectives. When the port high data was shut down a few years ago, I was very vocal. And I know Edie, remember, we talked about this a couple of years ago, but the Houthis were so excited and thanked me and were so grateful. And I said, whoa, I'm not doing this because I'm siding with you. I'm doing this because there's been a humanitarian principle that literally is in peril here. And I said, when you cross that line, I will jump on your back too. And sure enough, if everyone recalls, a year ago, I was pretty hard on the Houthis because we were trying to move forward with biometrics and all the equipment, the visas, and the things that we need to scale up biometrics so we can put liquidity into the marketplace and help in so many ways. And we were facing obstructions of access and so many different dynamics, monitoring, assessments. It was just a catastrophe in so many ways a year ago. But that is substantially improved lately. In fact, in the last 3 days, I was in Sana'a in a meeting with leaders from both sides. And with the Houthis, where we were having most of our problems in the north, it was a completely different atmosphere in terms of cooperation. I was literally shocked at the cooperation that we were getting. They were now asking me, what can we do to scale up? Is there anything that's in the way from their side? And there was a tremendous improved cooperative spirit. Now, proof's always in the pudding, but I can honestly tell you it was quite a shift from where it was a year ago, even 6 months ago. And we got very granular in the discussions about many of the issues that we're facing, and they were working through them as we sat down. It got to where I would have the Houthi leadership on my left hand and my WFP leadership on my right hand. I said, all right, as to this problem, who is the problem? And it was quite a positive conversation of how do we work through some of the issues that we're facing. We've never had that before. So that was positive. Now, back to the bottom line is the politics, the man-made conflict, whichever side you want to put the blame on, it needs to end. And this is what I'm pushing with everybody. My job is not political, but at the same time, I'm pushing the political leaders to come to a solution to end this war. What's at stake here? What are the consequences? How many people are suffering? And what's this all about? It's time to end the war. It's time to allow the Yemenis to move on with their lives. This is the worst humanitarian crisis on earth, period. I mean, we're looking at now 400,000 children, if we don't get immediate attention to, dying. That'd be every 75 seconds a child dying. I mean, what can be more important than that right now? And so this is why we need to end the war, silence the guns.
Thank you. We're going to try to squeeze in two quick...
About that second question, the second question, what's your message to the countries who are selling weapons to parties to the conflict, including in Yemen, to the coalition, but to other parties?
Well, that's a political question, but I mean, our position is clear. We want peace everywhere around the world, and silence the guns, period. End of story.
All right, we'll try to squeeze in two quick questions. James Reinl from The National and then Sato from NHK. James?
Thanks, Stefan. And yeah, Mr. Beasley, just on what you were talking about to Ibtisam a few seconds ago, a year ago, WFP was having to cut off food supplies, reduce deliveries in Houthi-run Yemen because of obstructionism by the rebel group. Now, a couple of days ago, you're sitting around a table and it sounds like you've got much more positive conversation. What do you think has changed with the group in the past year?
You know, that might be a $2 billion question. That's the amount of money we need to avert famine in the country. The Houthis love me 1 month and they hate me the next month. They love me 1 month. They seem to like me right now. And it might have been, and I'm speculating here, I did hear several of the leaders say to me how much they appreciated my being so vocal on the designation of the terrorist listing. And, I was very clear in speaking out about that would have just absolute humanitarian catastrophic consequences on a nation that we're already seeing 16 million people marching towards starvation, and that number would have spiked. Our anticipation was to 24 million people. And so I think they understood the devastation that designation would have on the country as a whole, on the humanitarian and the commercial side. So I'm guessing that was a significant part of it. What I do know is in the past few months in working with them, our teams on the ground on the biometrics and all of the details that go into play, there was a lot of fear, an unknown by the Houthis as to what we were doing. And I think they've come to really see what we're talking about, that we're not playing games. We have no nefarious objective here of hidden, purpose. And I had them say that we've really come to respect your teams, We've had greater dialogue. And they've said to me is that, look, we might not always agree with you, but we've learned now over the few years that you'll speak what you think the truth is. You'll speak your mind, and we've come to respect that. And I said, well, it's kind of like children. When I see one child doing something wrong, I'm gonna try to speak out on it. And I see one doing something right, I'm gonna try to compliment it. And I said, right now, we got a bunch of children fighting, and we need to speak out and stop this war.
Thank you. Last question to Sato from NHK. Sato?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this briefing, Mr. Beasley. My question is about food loss. While you were talking about the terrible situation in South Sudan, even gave the example of the people who had to eat the skin of dead animal. One of three food produced a year, 4 billion tons, has been spoiled. What do you want to say to this tremendous amount of food loss?
We're talking about the global food loss.
Yes, global food loss.
Yeah, I think there's about 4 billion metric tons of food produced per year. 1/3 of that's lost, as you well know. That has a value of almost $1 trillion. That would feed a couple billion people right there. And so when we look to the bigger picture, in terms of population growth going forward, and we're struggling now to feed a world of 7.7 billion people. So what do you think we're going to be doing when we have 15 billion people? And we've got to get really a handle on food loss. And you know the story. 1/3 of the food loss in developed nations is at the dinner table of the restaurants. And 1/3 of the food loss in developing countries is at the field to the market. And so we're working with regards to better practices in terms of storage, et cetera, with regards to this. But in my opinion, this is a very big opportunity. If we can improve food loss, my goodness, because it's not just food loss in the sense of value and people fed, it's also in terms of the carbon impact, environmental impact, from fertilizers to seeds to water that's being literally poured down the drain. And so this is a tremendous area of opportunity. And quite frankly, I had expected and hoped to really zero in on this issue by this year, but COVID comes along. You got devastation. We're in a crisis emergency mode right now, and we've had to defer some of our really opportunities that we were planning on scaling up the discussion on this, because I do think, particularly with the millennial population, that they're keenly interested in how to reduce food loss. But that's a major, it's not just policy, it's going to be PR campaigns and changing habits and behaviors of people. But I do and would like to see a lot being written about this over the next couple of years, because there's a lot that can be done. I do think the Food System Summit needs to have this as a major focal point, along with a few other major focal points.
David, thank you so much. We're releasing you at 11:29, a minute before we promised. So you're good. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you in person one of these days. But thank you for everything.
Well, that'd be great, especially to see you eating that.
Yeah.
James, good to see you.
Take care.
I recognize you with the mask on. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Thank you, David.